They've been burned a lot by legal marketing agencies that overpromise, underdeliver. They're not great marketing agencies, but they're really great at selling. So they get people in, they sell them on something, they lock them in a year-long contract, and then they kind of just ignore them.
Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. Welcome, everyone, to Sharp Strategies, Sweet Success. This is your host, Tiffany Swedensky, and today I am with Annette Choti. I met Annette recently, and I follow her on LinkedIn. She and her agency, Lockwell, is a marketing agency, and they do a ton of stuff, which she'll have to get into a little bit more about it. But she's also, and I hope my notes on this were right, but also you were a former practicing attorney, or are you still practicing?
I actually, yes, I am. I did not actually practice the law. I worked for the government for 25 years, but I am a proud member of the Missouri Bar. So
Oh,
yes.
actually, one of my newest clients is in Missouri, Kevin McManus,
Hmm.
and he was in the government as well, so that's fun. So, well, I guess I'll just turn it over to you and let you tell the audience about yourself.
Well, I was an attorney, like I said, for 25 years. And then I pivoted my career and worked for a lot of different legal marketing agencies. I discovered during my time and my tenure at those that they were very predatory against law firms, and they actually didn't really provide great SEO. Content wasn't legally accurate or ethically compliant sometimes. And so that just gave me a lot of ethical heartburns. So I ended up starting my own agency years ago, and now we do everything from websites, branding, SEO, content, social media, paid ads, absolutely everything for law firms and some other professionally based businesses, but mostly law firms.
So, I guess what's your favorite of all those things that you listed? You said SEO, ads, paid ads, digital marketing, like of those things, like what are your like top three?
Well, I have a team of 22 people, so I do not do everything myself. They say you should always surround yourself with people who are smarter and better than you. And I have been very blessed and lucky to have done that. So I would say my very favorite thing is actually none of those. My very favorite thing is to visit with potential clients, visit with the clients that we currently have, and really be sort of their fractional chief marketing officer and help them understand the connection between the vision for what they want for their law firm and how we can help them get there. And then that's pivoting every month, every quarter, depending on what we've achieved, what the new goals are, and all of that. So helping with all of the strategy.
And so when you're talking with the law firms, the attorneys, the marketers, whoever, what are like the big concerns or what are the things you keep hearing in those meetings?
Well, in like a potential client, like that they're not our client yet, they've been burned a lot by legal marketing agencies that overpromise and underdeliver. They're not great marketing agencies, but they're really great at selling. So they get people in, they sell them on something, they lock them in a year-long contract, and then they kind of just ignore them. Um, the churn is part of their business model. And so then when they finally get released from being held hostage in this year-long contract, they are frustrated and exhausted and skeptical of other marketing agencies. And so that is what I typically hear a lot. And it doesn't matter whether it is a solo law firm or a law firm with 100 lawyers. It seems like that story is repeated often.
How has, from your point of view, marketing changed like in the last 6 months or so? Like, what do you think have been the big shifts?
In the last 6 months, well, I will say that I think the foundational parts of marketing should always be there with really great search engine optimization and making sure that you are being found for the keywords and in the geographic locations you want to be found for, either through paid or organic marketing. I think everyone is talking about AI. And I think that that is important to look at. That search is not going away, but it's changing, right? So sometimes people are even using ChatGPT to search. So what we've noticed is that Reddit comes up a lot. I actually just gave a presentation on using Reddit as a marketing tool this morning. So how do you get seen on Reddit without being overly spammy or, advertise your services too much? Also on ChatGPT, we noticed that when people are searching for law firms on there, typing it in as a search engine, that ChatGPT is pulling a lot of listings and directories. So we're like, okay, we need to make sure that our law firms that are our clients are can be found in those very sort of prestigious listings and directories, but also in maybe lesser known ones in their local areas. So just making sure that we do everything we need to do as far like holding the line, doing all of the traditional type of digital marketing, but also looking at other ways that people are searching um to find resources online.
ChatGPT is definitely big. I was just actually what I was working on before we started the podcast was a case study in one website that has lost a lot of traffic.
Mm,
And it's lost a lot of traffic after August algorithm update, December algorithm update. And so, we're probably having issues with the content there, right? But something else that I'm also seeing in the data is that traffic to FAQ pages. One page in particular stood out because it was like, how do you calculate the settlement of a car accident?
mm,
And, traffic to that page declined like some triple digit percentage. And,
wow.
I mean, it's, look at that and you're just like, okay, obviously, like somebody's taking that question to, ChatGPT instead of Google. And when you think about it, ChatGPT is probably the better tool to get the answer that they're looking for anyway. So
I,
I find that interesting.
yeah, no, that's fascinating. I think that if we remember that ChatGPT is just pulling from Google, right? From search engines. Then what I would do is look and see who's in the top spot now and why. Is it a longer article? Do they have an infographic? Do they have a video attached to it? Like, why is ChatGPT pulling other sources other than yours? And we now know that ChatGPT will give you sometimes that little link that says where they got their source information from. So I'd be super curious to see um who what website or what article on a website actually did they reference, and why did they reference that instead of something else.
And that's something actually that I had on my list to do for this particular case study is to see like, okay, well, if we're not getting traffic to those blog pages anymore, is ChatGPT or Google still using our article to answer the question? And so like that's haven't gotten to that point in my research yet, but I suspect that we'll see like, yes, we're losing traffic, but we're also showing up as the source for a lot of these queries on these platforms.
Yeah, and then the question becomes, well, if people are on ChatGPT, what's the point of being on Google? But there still is a point, right? Because you won't show up on ChatGPT if you aren't on Google, or if your content is not on the search engine in the first place to pull it from, because ChatGPT isn't creating these answers, autonomously. They are, ChatGPT is pulling from other sources, and just making sure that and we do that with our content. It sounds like you do too. We go back and consistently look at the content that's doing well. We're like, okay, we'll leave it alone. And then the content that all of a sudden drop, we're like, well, why? What is beating us? And then we figure out, usually you can figure out why another piece of content has reached the first couple of spots, and then, you redo your content, so then yours is at the top. It's constant. It never ends.
Well, and that's why I feel like I'm getting on my soapbox, but like with AI, like I wasn't really scared when AI came out because like I felt like it would raise the floor but not the ceiling. Because like it's easier than ever to make content. Like it's kind of funny talking about the days of handwriting sales letters now and stuff like that. Um, but everyone's has access to that tool. Everyone can produce content. And so now it's not just who can use AI the most, it's like who can use it the best. And,
I
that requires effort.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I sometimes use this as an analogy. So in Toy Story, the movie, Buzz Lightyear thinks he is unique and original, and he believes he is the toy. And then he walks down the aisle and sees 1 million other Buzz Lightyears. And I always say, this is what lawyers think when they're using AI to write content. They're like, look at me, look at how great this content is. And then they walk down the aisle, right, and see that 1,000 other lawyers are typing in that same prompt or something similar into chat. Now, at some point, Google has to put something at the top. So if it has 1,000 articles that all sound, even if they're not exactly the same, all sound similar, it's going to figure out, its own algorithm is going to figure out, okay, these are all probably some version of Chat GPT. So I want to put something even better, more authoritative, something that has, shows more expertise at the top. So, I think it's a great starting point, but I think everybody's doing it.
Well, and we're layering our own analogies at this point. I do love yours though, because I remember that scene, and it's exactly that. Like, people don't realize, like, you write a website article, you're really proud of it, but like you step out and you see like 1,500 other people wrote that article, and it's
Exactly.
that same experience. And exactly, it all comes back to like quality. You still have to have quality of content. One theory I have about like ranking AI content and like how Google can tell. I mean, I do believe it's possible to some degree tell when something is AI written,
Mhm.
because, Google has access to the same AI tools everyone else does. They can, prompt their own engine to like write an article about personal injury attorney. And then they get a baseline for what an AI article practice area page for a personal injury attorney looks like. And they can take that and compare it against your content and if it's very similar to what
Yeah.
their system can generate, they're probably going to have a high degree of confidence that it was AI generated, not much effort was put into it. Now, I don't know if that's the system that they're using, but like when you think, there's so much out there, and when you compare it side by side, it becomes obvious like which ones stand out and are more unique.
I think that that's absolutely the case. And I think that as we move forward, and maybe somebody listening to this, podcast 5 years from now, this will all seem very antiquated, right? But here we are right now. And I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, this is what I always say: Google has to choose something to be at the top of their search engine, right? There's 1 million chocolate chip cookies recipes out there, but there's only one that is at the top of Google. So why is it there? And that's where we want all of our clients to be, right? Is at the top, saturating the page, hopefully not with just one article, but maybe even more than one, and maybe even with paid advertising, right? That's kind of the dream, is that when somebody lands, asks a question, that all they find is my client. That's what we want. And I think that as we move forward, while ChatGPT can make our lives a lot easier, right? With maybe ideas for articles or maybe even outlines, right? But at the end of the day, I think that Google will reward someone that shows a little more expertise and authority in a unique way.
Well, so shifting gears a little bit from AI, although I love talking about it, I feel like I've talked about it in the last like 3 or 5 episodes. It's kind of hard to avoid.
It is hard
Um,
to avoid in our industry, but it is not the foundation upon which a great marketing strategy is built, but it's definitely part of our ecosystem now.
oh yeah. Um, so kind of a specific question, but like, what are you guys doing for social media for the law firms?
So we typically look at social media. We look at that as an avenue to showcase a brand, just continue brand awareness, to be kept top of mind. Frankly, we all, I heard originally it was 7 times someone had to see you. Then I heard 27. I don't know. A couple weeks ago, I heard it was 87. I don't know if that's true or not. I think we can all agree it's a lot. So, just keeping top of mind, I think it depends on what type of, practice areas they have. Like a personal injury attorney will be very different than, let's say, a very sophisticated business attorney or commercial real estate attorney, right? So, we typically tell lawyers everyone needs to be on LinkedIn, no matter what your practice area is. Everyone can probably just get some visibility on LinkedIn, but that does, or I mean, I'm sorry, Instagram. That does better for some than others. Intellectual property attorneys do great on Instagram. Facebook, family lawyers do great on Facebook as well. We do not do TikTok. And the reason for that is because a lot of attorneys do attorney-client privileged information on their phone. They take emails or respond to emails or texts or whatever it is. They log into their portals or platforms where there's confidential information. And if you put TikTok on your phone, you agree that TikTok can look throughout your entire phone. So a lot of lawyers don't know that. And so because I am an attorney as well, I feel that that's just part of ethics compliance. And so we don't do TikTok. But the rest of it, what we're doing as a strategy is just trying to get visibility. And then even better is if someone sees something really interesting, like, can you tell if your spouse has been hiding cryptocurrency, before your divorce? We want them off of those platforms and then onto the law firm websites, so that they don't get distracted by shiny objects on social media. We want them on the actual law firm website. So we try to be informative and interesting.
And the interesting is hard to do, particularly if your practice area is personal injury. Something, I'm telling a lot of my clients to do is to tell stories. And, they don't necessarily have to be your stories.
Mhm.
That's what you see a lot of influencers and YouTubers do. They get a lot of views telling stories. And, they're not their stories, they're historical stories. And, I'm old enough, I'm to the point where it's just like, yeah, I knew that. But, there's a whole audience of people who didn't, who weren't alive in the 90s and are fascinated by facts from that era. But, it's so much more than that. Generally,
Mm.
I think when you get down into like who uses social media and who uses Google, and this is going to sound like a dig, but generally, like, I feel like attorneys, people who work for attorneys, professionals, working in our environment, probably overestimate how much, the average person thinks about the content that they're seeing and like thinks about it critically and like truly understands it. So it's important to be entertaining. Otherwise, it's just not going to resonate, with a lot of people who are using these platforms.
Yeah, we had a lawyer just this week. Typically, most of our lawyers, they just look at our content and it sails through. But there's one attorney and who is newer that is working with us, and we're writing content for him as well as part of our strategy. And literally everything was redlined. And I'm like, okay, this is not a white paper. This is not going to a court. We need to make sure it's legally accurate. We need to make sure that it's ethically compliant. We need to make sure it's true. But past that, the truth is no one is going to be getting this granular with this piece of content on your website. And the same is true for social media. I think stories are wonderful. And frankly, if you can juxtapose personal interests into it. There's a law firm in Kansas City where I'm from, and a bunch of the partners just go out and eat at different restaurants, and they record it and they talk about different cases and things like that, obviously while maintaining privacy. But it's fascinating because they're eating at new restaurants, and it's just entertaining. And I know other law firms have done that as well. Other content creators have done it outside of the law. There's a woman, she does makeup. Her name's Bailey Sarian, and she talks about unsolved mysteries from the past, like the 1800s and the turn of the century, while she's putting on makeup. And it's fascinating to listen to. So she's juxtaposed two things that have nothing to do with each other, but it's so entertaining and interesting. You kind of just stay. So the lawyers that have figured this out are the real winners.
And, I feel like social media is kind of this dark zone when it comes to attribution. So many attorneys I talk to are really laser focused in on attribution. And I
Mhm.
understand why. You want to make sure your spend is going the right places. But, something
Right.
like social media, it's just so dark. You really don't know because all of these platforms have a vested interest in keeping people on the platform.
Yes.
So, like, the
Yes.
trick is getting them off the platform. That's the hard thing to do.
That is the trick, Tiffany. That is the trick. And I also agree that it is very difficult to quantify. It's dirty SEO, right? Not that it's black hat, nothing, no one's doing anything wrong here, but dirty SEO meaning you don't really know the ROI on it, right? And the truth is that now we know that consumers don't just see one thing and call you, right? It's not like the yellow pages where like, wow, I need an attorney. You go to the yellow page. I mean, many people listening here may not even have ever seen a yellow pages in their life, right? And so, there's one avenue for advertising. That's it. So now someone might see you on, maybe they see an ad, then maybe they see you on LinkedIn, then maybe somebody talks about you, then they see a billboard, then, maybe whatever it is, right? Maybe they hit your website before and then they came back to it. So it's difficult sometimes to figure out exactly the the journey that a client had to get to a lot. We do our best, right? But it's sometimes hard.
Yeah. And then they themselves don't always truly know how they found your law firm, which, just adds a layer of confusion onto it. I've had people tell the law firms I work for that they've seen our billboards when we're not doing billboards, or that they've seen our TV when we're not doing TV. And it's bizarre, but, people just they're not tracking their own user experience on your website. And so, first party data about how you found us, what was your journey like, is often kind of bad for that reason. We still collect it,
Yeah.
but like people aren't dialed into their behaviors in that way unless they're marketers, probably.
No, it's super muddy. And, even using something like CallRail, where you can exactly find out where they came from. And for someone who doesn't know that's listening, CallRail, there's others as well, where you have multiple phone numbers, right? So, and they all dial into the same number, but they can tell you where, oh, this phone number is on a billboard or this phone number is on social media. So we know, even if you have that data, Tiffany, it doesn't mean that that's the only place they saw you. It's just the last place that they saw you before they called. So even that isn't a perfect way to quantify or qualify how someone got to you. Yeah.
And then, and so much comes from like word of mouth and recommendations too, that
Yeah.
I feel like um you have to invest in SEO to be the most visible when somebody searches for your category,
Mhm.
but you also need social media, and you also need referral marketing and community marketing to like get your name out there enough in the community that it's not just like showing up there, it's showing up there because so many people are recommending you.
Yeah.
And
I agree. I think that depending on your niche, right? But like when a stranger is recommending you, I mean, that's really, really powerful.
was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
No, I think that anyone that is listening to this is probably interested in marketing their law firm. And many people, when they're listening to podcasts like this, right, they feel overwhelmed regarding what they should do, when they should do it. And I think it's really important that they have resources like you, Tiffany, to be able to know that our industry is very predatory, right? The legal marketing industry is very predatory, filled with a lot of people who are not interested in developing relationships and not interested in really growing law firms and partnering with them, but rather just getting them in and then a lot of churn, right? And so I just I appreciate you asking me on. I'm honored to be here because I feel like voices like yours are very important in our industry where you are genuinely trying to provide a lot of information and value to people who are the small business owners, right? Just trying to grow a business that happens to be a law firm.
Oh, and I really appreciate that. And I mean, all the stuff that you're doing, and I loved everything that we talked about. I mean, we were super on the same page about a lot of stuff, which
Mm,
um, but yeah, it's important because like, yeah, there are a lot of people out there. I just saw an ad on Instagram that I mean to spoof on social media at some point, but it's like three kids, and I say kids because they look like either fresh out of college or maybe they're still in college. And they're like, does your law firm need leads? We'll generate leads for you. And I'm just like, bro, you look 14. What do you know about doing this? Like, and I shouldn't poo-poo somebody just because they're younger, but it just, that's the kind of people who are out there advertising that they do legal marketing. And they probably know how to set up a Facebook ad campaign. They probably know how to take your money. And, but they, and they know how to generate some calls and maybe like a case sign up once every month or so. But they're not building like a sustainable like growth strategy for the firm. They're not elevating your brand. They're just getting you short-term leads for, really cheap probably.
and maybe not even really quality ones at that. I did a whole marketing campaign because I got frustrated with all of the bro marketers. And not that there aren't guys that are great at marketing, because there are. I'm not saying that. But when I say bro marketing, I just mean that very cheesy, salesy, super intense and aggressive marketing. Like, how do I get you into this marketing plan today? And then after that, it's ghosting. And so I actually developed a whole marketing campaign on that called No Bro Marketing because I got so angry because here's the thing, they're not great at marketing. They're not, but they are great at sales. And so what happens is a lot of law firms are so intensely invested in growing their business and genuinely want to grow, and they are like I said, it's a predatory environment where they are taken advantage of by these just, I have to give it to them. They're just really great salespeople. So, I think our industry could do with a lot more people like you.
People who like you as well. And well, thanks for coming on and talking about this. There's more we can go into, but I'm to the point where I'm going to have to start thinking about repeat guests. And so I'll probably reach out to you somewhere down the road and see if you can
Oh,
come
I'd
back.
love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, well, thanks so much. Is there any place in particular you want people to go look you up, follow you, download a report, anything like that?
Yeah, it's easy if they want to go to LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, Annette Choti. And then if they have any specific questions that they wanted to ask, they can find me at Annette. It's ANNETTE at lockwell.com.
So, well, thanks so much again. Really appreciate it. And we'll see everyone next episode.